panel discussion on the relations between the European Union and Russia, which comes at the right moment, given the discussion we had about the very nature of Russia as an actor. Now we can illustrate this in more specific terms with our distinguished guests from the Ukraine, from Romania, from where exactly are you from? Bahrain. Bahrain, and the United States of America / Berlin. So we are perfectly diverse in the various perspectives. And it is a very interesting subject, and it always was, because it brings up a number not only of practical problems, like what I mentioned with energy security, but also with very cultural and idea-based questions of what is actually relevant in the definition of relations between, in our case today, the Russian Federation and the European Union, because the European Union, as I described it earlier, is not a homogeneous actor, but consists of sovereign states that decided that it's in their interest to get their act together and to pool resources in a functionally limited way. It's not meant to be a replacement of the different member states, but they added another layer of governance to the already existing bilateral relations or multilateral relations, which makes it very irritating for non-experts, because sometimes the EU matters and sometimes it doesn't, because sometimes it has a competence, sometimes it doesn't. And we have, as I've described earlier, in the European Union, a value-based foreign policy, while in many other parts of the world, we can speak of a more interest-based foreign policy. And so there are sometimes pretty complicated misperceptions when it comes to how shall we actually deal with this and that problem that affects us, because we can't choose neighbors, because there are Russian borders with the European Union. But even if it's with the European Union, the specific country that borders to Russia might have a very different perception on Russia as such in comparison with other actors. Or to put it in more general terms, Germany is seen as a country which is more pro-Russia. We have a number of examples where we find common denominators and starts functioning bilateral projects, while countries like Latvia see this as a dramatic problem for the survival of a country if you give human rights to a minority that technically is a minority in your country, but on the other side of the border is an army of 100 and how many million people live in Russia right now? 80, 40?
About 140 billion.
40 million. So the 1.4 million Latvians are a little afraid that the 100 times bigger Russia will use the minority rights in the country of Latvia to make the existence of the state of Latvia an episode in the history of this Baltic state. This is their obsession, their paranoia, however you want to call this, but it defines a problem that is, first of all, a Latvian one, but it also affects the definition of do we have a common position of the European Union towards Russia. So this was just one example to remind you that there is a lot to communicate and a lot to build bridges. So I think we start with one of the hottest reflections at the moment, and that's the question in which direction the Ukraine is looking at, because they are kind of sitting on the fence. We saw in the Orange Revolution some 10 years ago that half of the country of the Western Ukraine would rather like to see the Ukraine becoming a member of the European Union, and they go through the process of getting an associate status, which then would lead to a candidate status, and then more later than sooner, they will join the European Union and can count on the support of Poland, which doesn't want to be the end of Europe and rather want to be a middle country. And if the border moves further east, this is in Poland's best interest. So that's the one half, and the other half that speaks Russian has always been closer to Russia, and in the times of the Orange Revolution, the country almost broke apart. And now we have these two pulling forces that are not exactly imperialist forces, but they offer alternative bilateral treaties to make the Ukraine moving either further west or further east. And this is all about geopolitics, and therefore it would be interesting not only to talk about a country in the influential zones of the west and the east, but to hear the voice of a representative from the Ukraine. That's why my first question is, what's the position of the Ukraine when we think of relations between the EU and Russia?
Питання полягає в тому, яка ваша думка щодо відношення України в цьому чотирикутнику відношення головних гравців в світі? Яка роль України?
Я буду по-русски. Я вот задумываясь над тем, почему ни одна по существу из республик, ну, кроме Белоруссии и Казахстана, не хочет вступать в таможенный союз. Почему мы, и Украина, и Грузия, и другие республики, я уже не говорю об странах Прибалтики, все-таки хотят вступить в Европейский Союз?
I'm questioning myself why, among other post-Soviet countries, Ukraine is one of that countries that doesn't want to sign the trade agreement with Russia. Georgia and Latvia, Lithuania doesn't want to do that, and I'm questioning why.
По-видимому, в политике современной России есть то, что настораживает. То есть попытка быть центром и доминантным центром в таможенном союзе, хотя Россия подает таможенный союз как что-то подобие Европейского союза.
I believe that Russia has the ambition to become the center in this trade union, and that is why I personally think that Russia wants to be a polar against the European Union and want to be some kind of eastern version of European Union.
Даже политика России, которая основывается так на мягкой силе, она в то же время и настораживает нас в Украине. Почему? Потому что большой, огромный экономический потенциал России и политические амбиции России быть все-таки таким центром, мировым, который влияет на всю планетарную политику, это, конечно, настораживает нас и многих и другие республики бывшего Советского Союза.
Even though Russia uses soft power, foreign and domestic policy is pretty suspicious for Ukraine, and that is why we pay a lot of attention to all the actions Russia is using towards Ukraine, and we are conscious about their actions, and that is why this is one of the reasons we don't really trust Russia's intentions in this whole trade ambitions.
Сейчас Россия реализует такой проект, культурно-информационный проект, как «Русский мир». И он вызывает в Украине сопротивление. Почему? Потому что фактором действия этого проекта «Русский мир» является что? И православие, и внедрение русского языка, включая и русскую культуру. И за этим чувствуется то, что когда-то знаменитый академик российский Дмитрий Лихачев назвал культурным империализмом. И он тоже вызывает определенную тревогу, потому что это не тот культурный мост, который мы хотели бы строить между Украиной и Россией.
Right now, there is a cultural project that was launched in Russia. It calls the Russian World, and it uses the means of culture and language to influence Ukraine. And we are very worried about this influence as long as Ukraine has got its own problems. Excuse me, I didn't mention this. Also, this project uses religion as one of the factors of influence.
Но в традициях российского государства, как и имея в виду Российской еще империи, было использовать православие как фактор государственной политики. И это очень влияет на Украину сегодня, потому что у нас в Украине нет единства православия. Есть автокефальная самостоятельная церковь, есть церковь, которая подчиняется Московскому патриархату, есть церковь, которая тяготеет к католицизму, это греко-католическая церковь. Это тоже сложный момент в внутренней жизни Украины.
Russia used to use this religious factor in the past, and it keep using it right now. And this is we see it as a big threat. As long as Ukraine doesn't have a one single religion, we have several separate churches. One of which is belong to Russian hegemony, I would say. And that is why we are afraid of this cultural and religious influence.
Последние социологические исследования в Украине показали, что большинство населения Украины, несмотря на ощутимые разные ориентации, все-таки за вступление Украины в Европейский Союз.
Last sociological research showed that most of Ukrainians are pro-Ukrainian, pro-European, and they really want to see Ukraine in the European Union, even though, as it has already been mentioned, Ukraine has separate views. Eastern Ukraine and Western Ukraine has separate views.
Если можно выразиться так, Украина это порубежная такая цивилизация. Она находится между Западом и между Востоком. И это очень сложное положение для Украины.
Ukraine has a very complex situation because we are situated on the edge of Western world and Eastern world, and it has its consequences for our country.
И, конечно, вступление Украины в Европейский Союз могло бы изменить внутреннюю ситуацию в Украине. Украина уже знала, общество украинское уже было точно знало, куда главный вектор развития Украины в Европу.
And we believe that if we join European Union, Ukrainian citizens will finally understand what is our main vector of development, and it would much improve our internal situation.
Конечно, мы понимаем в Украине все сложности. Если, допустим, в случае даже подписания соглашения о свободной торговле с Европейским Союзом, Россия, конечно, будет создавать определенные трудности, в первую очередь экономического характера, и мы к этому готовы, хотя это будет очень серьезная проблема для Украины.
We understand that if Ukraine will sign the agreement of free trade with European Union, it will have huge consequences on our economy, as long as Russian and Ukrainian markets are really interconnected, and obviously we are ready for Russia to use this economical means of influence.
Мы знаем, какие есть проблемы в Латвии, в Литве, в экономическом плане, несмотря на то, что они являются полноправными членами Европейского Союза, но все же для Украины очень важно это фактор суверенности и возможности все-таки играть по правилам, которые характерны для Европейского Союза.
We are aware of economical situation in Lithuania and Latvia, and we are aware of our own situation, obviously, and its Russian impact on it. But we believe that if we will behave according to the values of European Union, Western democracy, it will have a much better impact and much better influence on our country.
Даже мы смотрим внимательно на процессы, которые в Белоруссии проходят, и мы видим, что несмотря на то, что Белоруссия является членом таможенного союза, все-таки очень много серьезных экономических проблем она сегодня и переживает. Поэтому, так сказать, позитивы таможенного союза для Украины очень неясные. И поэтому склоняются и даже политики, которые привыкли ориентироваться на Россию, все-таки склоняются к вступлению в Европейский Союз.
Considering economical situation in Belarus, as it's part of trade agreement with Russia, our politicians, even very pro-Russian, they understand that the best choice for us would be European Union.
Поэтому для сегодняшнего для сегодняшней конфигурации, которая есть в Европейском Союзе, мы считаем, что вхождение Украины не ослабит Европейский Союз, а даже в какой-то степени в будущем и зміцнить, усилит. Я вспоминаю известные выражение Шарля де Голля, который говорил: Европа, это он видел Европу до Урала. И поэтому я считаю, что в перспективе и Россия, она так или иначе, в любой, какой-то, может быть, другой форме, все равно она будет очень тесно связана с Европейским Союзом. Я считаю, что эта перспектива для России вполне реальная.
I believe that Ukraine, as a part of European Union, could have a good influence on the whole Europe, and I believe that in the future Russia could also think about its union to European Union, maybe in some other way as all the countries that are already in the Union, but I truly believe that it could have a very good impact on Russia as well.
Thank you very much. The European Union has, since the 1990s, an institutionalized dialogue with Russia. So it's not about let's start building bridges, but we have a lot of bridges that divide the different topics into 4 spaces, as they put it. The one is an economic space, the second is a foreign policy and security space, the third one is about justice and home affairs and human rights, and the fourth one is culture and research and the things that don't cost much money and don't lead to far interest conflicts, so you can present something successful. Because in the first one, the asymmetry is clear, that Russia could technically import investment goods and consumer goods unlimited from the European Union, while we mainly import energy from Russia. That makes it very asymmetric. And Russia doesn't take the European Union seriously as an international actor, so why should they talk to us? And when it comes to human rights, they don't see this as a necessary point to talk about with the European Union, because that's an interference in the domestic affairs of a sovereign state, and the European Union loves to build packages to do not isolate the different interests, but to make it a coherent concept. So that is roughly the structure of the dialogue since the 1990s, and the question is, what needs to be improved? We are pretty close to Christmas, as one can see by all the sick people and the fact that you can buy gingerbread at Aldi. So that's the time to make wishes. And if a former president of Romania could make a wish, what would be your wish to improve relations with Russia and the European Union?
Maybe you have occasion to listen many people, specialists, professors, talking about theory of cultural diplomacy, about politics and business. I prefer to present you a personal confession, because the greatest gift I received from my destiny was occasion to have profound personal talks with important leaders in last 24 years, including Gorbachev, Yeltsin, many former prime minister after fall of Soviet Union, or former member of Politburo of Soviet Communist Party, Bolshevik Party of Soviet Union, before the fall of communist, especially Gorbachev cabinet. Members becoming, after fall of Soviet Union, presidents of Moldavia, of Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Georgia, and other countries. Because of the phenomenon exactly similar what happened after the death of Alexander the Great 2,000 years ago. After the fall of empire of Alexander the Great, the generals becoming chief in different countries was the same. Aliyev, Nazarbayev, Luchinsky, Shevardnadze, and others becoming presidents of some democratic countries. When we talk about cultural diplomacy, and myself yesterday evening, I insisted about culture element in this binomial, cultural diplomacy. But don't refer at only intellectual elite. Because just before fall of communist regime, a Western intellectual elite don't understanding nothing about former Soviet Union, nothing. And American intellectual elite was dominated by anti-Sovietism. But European intellectuals, especially from French and Italian, was totally pro-communist, including extraordinary figures, writers, artists. They was accepted this communist utopia and justifying the crime and ignore all witness about the crime or communism, concentration camp, torture, or what happened, but considering cynically a normal price, a secondary price for the future of communist ideology. This was the case of intellectual Jean-Paul Sartre, as the other, especially in French and Italy, but some including Germany before Second World War. Why? Because in 1989, few months before the fall of communist regime in Central Southeastern country, including in sphere influence of Soviet Union, including Soviet Union, what happened? Don't understand nothing, including my also close Huntington. Huntington in 1989 said, maybe after 20 years, we expecting the falling of Soviet Union, few months before. And also was the same position of CIA before Malta, meeting in Malta between Bush and Gorbachev was published now. The documents of CIA presented at CIA. So no, it's a very, very solid Gorbachev Soviet Union. Why? Because they not understanding what is main element important for cultural diplomacy. Understanding the other, understanding mentalities, understanding psychology, not only national psychology, individual psychology. Was not be able. Western European and United States especially don't understand nothing. Why? Because I present you a confession. I was born just near border between Romania and Russia. We talk about Russia, near Dniester. Now is Republic of Moldavia. Was just border where Second World War becoming. And the pact, Ribbentrop-Molotov pact, was a direct influence in my life because it was a moment when Russia occupied Moldavia and my family go to Romania. I was in 1 year old in that time. Was an extraordinary advantage for me when I became president of Romania in 1996, 7 years after fall of communism in Romania, to know what represented Russian mentality. Russian mentality, 3 elements is important. Firstly, the feeling of power, accepted to be normal because it's the greatest country in the world. Europe is all Europe is very, very small in comparison with huge Russia. Secondly is population. Third is history. It's a history of great power. Second is a special feeling of sentimentalism. It's Russian sentimentalism. It's Slavic sentimentalism. It's impossible for Americans to understand that. We need the literature, because maybe to read Dostoevsky and many types of Tolstoy, to understand what represented Slavic It's completely, maybe Latin is have a more a possibility to understand something, because between Latin and Slavic is the same sentimentalism, and it's very, very, very important. And the third is the value of a personal relation. Was a personal relation is like in French, the expression avant la lettre, is represented the cultural diplomacy avant la lettre, because possibility to be together. And I said my gift of destiny for me was this possibility to have relation with this representative of Russian state power, president, prime minister, minister of foreign affairs, but also Russian intellectuals. So high, because it's an extraordinary intellectual elite coming from Russia. And yesterday evening, I talked about what represented Russian culture for European culture. It's impossible to imagine European culture without Russian intellectual, artists, literature, music contribution. When I said personal relation, I don't take into consideration official meetings or family photo or shake hand of different talkings in official. No, I especially in my mind is dinner together, special talkings, four eyes, between four eyes, or and especially drinking, because this is a moment in Russia or in Ukraine, as the same. I'm meeting with President Kuchma. It's a moment of the toast, because vodka drink is in small glasses. It's a many each drinks, maybe 10s, 15s, 20s. Each is with a toast, friendly toast. Each talk about it. It's not possible for an American. It's a work dinner. What represent work dinner? Ni work, ni dinner. What represented speaking about continue the conference? No. The evening and lunch, the coffee, but drinking with a Slavic represented a really friendship relation. This personal relation is extremely important. Why? Because the other characteristic of Russian is a myth, is a mythical approach, is a myth of savior, is a president continuing the Tsar system, and in history, is the father of the nation. Why? Because you said Putin now is very popular. Not only popular, but is supported by 60%. It's a 60% because he is the president. And his comportment is the comportment of the father of the nation. And this is first, democracy is second. Firstly important is to be father of the nation. In Romania was not so different. For me, even despite my effort to represent coming from university, a completely different Romanian people want and continue to want a father. It's a long way to Tipperary to change this mentality, because we can change rapidly laws, we can change institutions, but it's very difficult to change mentality. Long mentality built by the long history. Why? Because it's difficult to understand, but it's a single possibility. And many people was very curious what happened in Romania, because after fall of communism in Romania and after bloody revolution, where more 3,000 people was killed, and more 3,000 people was injured, grave injured. In power continue to be former communist and follow the same way to Russia, building oligarch system, because oligarch system is very, very normal for mentality in Russia. Was the same in Romania. But after 4 years, I acceded with the supporting by the people, because people want to be in European Union, want to be in NATO, want to be in NATO because the fear of Russia was also in all our history, in mentality of the people, fear to Russia, because Romanian people was a Latin people, surrounded by Slavic people, but surrounded by three great empires: Ottoman Empire, Austrian Empire, and Russian Empire. But it was very curiously because why? Because I intervened. Important was the pravoslavny, you said in Russian language, the pravoslavny Orthodox religion, with the same Orthodox religion, different of Catholic or Protestant religion. And in Romania, the religious service was in Slavic language. And in Cyrillic, because in Ukraine we more, because Mogila, Yeremia Mogila is the family that king of Romanian Moldavia, becoming one of the founder of Ukrainian church, not Russian church, Ukrainian church in Kiev. Why? Because it's a very, very complicated. But I don't respect all agreement by former president. He was is a public now in relation with the former secret service of Russia and the FAO in the treaty. I completely changed. But curiously for all, Russian accept this. Why? Because I respected the position of great or superpower of Russia in the region. It was very important, because it's important comportment, not agreement signed. Direct. For example, in Wien was a meeting organized by NATO, including Solana was Secretary General in the time, and I was invited special guest, together the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia. And all was under attack in the presence of the press, attack Russia for policy menacing countries in Southeastern Europe. It was very difficult in this situation for Minister of Foreign Affairs. But in my speech, I said, in the name of Romania, neighboring, not neighboring now, because our fortunately neighbor now is Ukraine. It's another type of relation. But as a country in the region, I said, Romania respect the interest of great power of Russia until the moment then menacing our position, intervene in our politics. And until now, Russia don't intervene in our politics. And they keeping in mind. My first interview after when I was elected by the people, direct president, was for Neviamissia Mea Gazeta. Neviamissia Mea Gazeta was the first interview immediately after resulting of the people's vote. And I said, in all my life, I was formed like intellectuals in Russian culture. And it's very important to make this difference between communist politics and maybe official politics of Russia and Russian culture and Russian people. And without respect, it's not possible to talk about, it's not possible to obtain any result in a relation with Russia without this respect. And secondly, was a friendly relation. There's one example, because the president decided, or not other. President decided, Yeltsin decided, Putin decided, now in what politics, especially foreign politics in Russia, completely. In Istanbul was an important summit of OCC in the presence of Clinton, all chief of state was from NATO and OCC. And the problem in Istanbul summit in 2000 was the same. In 1996 in Lisbon, was not possible to finish, to put the end of the conference because Russia don't sign agreement prevent the Russian troops in Moldavia, especially. And what was the problem? And the session continue because the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia, Ivanov in that time, said no, it's not possible to impose to Russia an agreement. And in that moment, Luchinsky, president in that time of Republic of Moldavia, but former member of Politburo of Russia in the third position, he invited Yeltsin at a coffee, together Ivanov, foreign minister, and he said, is a name in Russia is a typical, he said, we are friendly, we talk a coffee, and see, now is a birthday, in 19 November is the birthday of Emil. And it's possible to make a favor. You signed that, your decision. And Ivanov said, no. But Yeltsin, and Luchinsky said, you are responsible, not Ivanov. Yeltsin said yes, because it was only a discussion in four persons. And this decided was because sure was need 10 years for the reality of this agreement, but it's a possible personal relation between Gorbachev and Margaret Thatcher, personal relation between Gorbachev and Kohl, respected between us, special respect was decisive in the accepted to put end of Cold War, because it's a great figure of leaders. Now it's impossible. Now the power of Putin is a weakness of other leader, because that now don't exist a leader. Cameron maybe, or in France, or including, in my opinion, Obama is not a real leader. He's a politician, maybe good managers of including foreign, but he's not great leaders. Kohl talked with me in Bonn, in the same room, talking with Gorbachev, and he said it's impossible, like Rhine, the Rhine River, it's impossible to stop, said Kohl to Gorbachev. It's impossible to stop reunification of Germany. And finally, Gorbachev understood and said, yes, they becoming friendly, respecting the world. It's completely different what happened now in this formal, politically correct expression, agreement, not any important. And the last, Russian accept interlocutor at the same level, accept United States only because it's a great power, but morally and sentimentally accept only Germany. Only Germany, because for all Russian is extraordinary respect according to Germany. I use this in a special decision. Before, because I know what represented intervention of NATO in former Yugoslavia. And Romania was partnership, and Bulgaria also was partnership with NATO and supported NATO. But in my mind was what happened with imports of gas from Russia in the moment, because Russia used gas for blackmail in all situations. And I participate together ambassador of Russia and Germany for launching a new conduct of gas from Romania. And in the moment when Romania supported NATO and Bulgaria supported NATO. Russia cut the gate with Bulgaria. Bulgaria was a traditional ally of Russia. Cut, but not Romania. Why not for Romania? Because it was a Russian-German company. And I imaginated in all situations, Russia don't have position against Germany. It's a problem of mentality. It's not a political problem. It's a problem of respect, coming the long history, coming from Peter the Great, coming by relation with Prussia, coming respect only in the war. Because was respected enemies in the Second World War, the forces between Germany and Russia. Without the possibility to understanding this element, sentimental elements related by mentality, don't exist cultural diplomacy, and this explains the failure of classical diplomacy in many situations.
Thank you very much. Dr. Nassar, in my presentation, I talked about bridges and that they can help to transport cultural content in this very abstract way. Should we see the European Union as a normative actor representing human rights that we consider universal rights? Is this legitimate in relations with others, in our particular case here with Russia? And can the EU do something to promote human rights in its bilateral relations, or is this just something that is in each and every country's full responsibility?
Well, first of all, I think the EU has put human rights in the center of its own negotiations. And whether it's an FTA or other negotiations, part of that negotiations is human rights. So to answer your questions, if we look at the situation now as it is now, the answer is yes. That means human rights constitute an important part of every sort of free trade agreement which EU signs with other countries. But I think what we should be looking at now is the future. And this is the whole idea now. What's the future of the relationship between the EU and Russia, and how this relationship is going to be the future? And I think if we look at the future, not since Alvin Toffler's The Third Wave, nothing has actually, no real effort been looked at the future and how the future is going to change in a major way. I think we are going through shifts and there will be big changes. What we see now doesn't reflect what we're going to see in the future. And I think if we look at how things were progressing, in which countries were acting alone, then they decided to sort of form of unions and work together. So we've seen the European Union, the African Union, the ASEAN, then the NAFTA, and we've seen all of this as sort of, let's group together so that we can actually work against the other. I think this one is going to change. This is based on what we see today and what we look at in the future. Now, what we're saying today, that there are these shifts that's going to happen, and this shift is very clear, but yet we don't really give it that attention. Somebody says that now what we see in this whole changing world, what we see with Facebook and Google and other things, somebody says that Facebook now is more important than Germany, or Google is more important than UK. Now what we're seeing is a Facebook country and a Google country, in which people actually, a Facebook country, people from every place of the world are actually connecting through that sort of space, cyberspace. The same thing goes with other sort of media. Now, I believe that we're going through a shift in which enterprise will be the main. And countries, yes, there will be sovereign countries, yes. But people will be more belong to each other than belonging to a specific country, yes. And I just gave example this morning with Simon Crane when he said that humanity first and country second. So we're going to see that if we look at it in the positive way, humanity will be coming first and people will be sticking together in terms of humanity. And in the negative way, it could be no. Humanity and human rights could be totally abused and people will be more looking at themselves, away, separating themselves from the others. But if we think on the positive side, I think, and this is what we're trying to preach here or to give examples of the culture diplomacy, is that people will be connecting with each other and linking with each other regardless of the government. And you can see that through Twitter, through Facebook, through YouTube, and people are just communicating, passing information, getting information, even creating their own sort of a space. So we can see that the groups, they're creating their own groups. So we see in a Twitter group or WhatsApp group, and these groups come from different countries, different places, and they work together. I believe there will be more power to the enterprise, to the private sectors, to civil societies, to shape up the world. And that's why it is important to support that for a better relationship in the future. So I think if you look at the future, human rights is just one part, because human rights is the essence, or you can say the tool that could actually strengthen this link between people. And people think of their common sense or their common sort of uniformity in terms of humanity, rather than just in terms of their small size of their sect or their environment or their religion or their etc. So I think we should be prepared for that shift. And the only way to prepare that, we have to empower our people, empower the people to deal positively with that rather than negatively with that. And I think this is the responsibility of our institution, for example, here, to actually focus more on the tools that will help each person to identify the way for the future. And if we look at human rights is the foundation for any development. So it's a foundation for sustainable development that will be a tool to progress towards the future. So if you look at the future, how we're going to go in this relationship, I think it is difficult to say now as EU. I don't know whether the EU will stay as it is as EU, or again it will be going back into fragmentation. And if we look at Russia, we don't think of Russia as we see it today, but we have also to think of Russia as we see it in the future. Thank you.